From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Today, we'll learn about the search for two unhoused men who went missing after last month's historic flooding. Then Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson shares how the city is preparing to take in people coming to the Midwest due to climate change.
People will move because of a changing climate. And I think that a place like Milwaukee is ripe to reap the benefits in terms of population growth of that movement.
Plus, we'll speak with the new executive director of Circus World about her plans for the future of the historic site.
Basically, I've been gone for 23 years, and now I'm returning back to my roots and making the full circle as executive director and third generation in my family.
All that's coming up on Lake Effect, but first, here are today's headlines. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Thank you so much for joining us. Officially, one death has been attributed to Milwaukee's historic flooding last month, but the families of people who were living in a homeless encampment aren't so sure. Two men were found in Lake Michigan from a Southside encampment that sits along the Kinnickinnic River. Another two are missing. Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel's Gina Lee Castro has been reporting on the missing men. She joins WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez to share what she's learned and what efforts are being made to find the missing men.
Can we start with the missing men? Who are they and what did you find out about them?
What I've learned about Miguel Flores is his family reported him missing on August 14th, and I've really just connected with his two nephews, Arturo and Juan Vasquez. But Miguel was a great uncle. He traveled with them for Arturo's son's soccer tournaments. He's really funny. He's a hard worker. He worked at their construction company, and he was homeless by choice.
And can you tell me about where he was staying? You reported quite a bit on the encampment, and what should we know about it and who is all there?
Yeah. So the homeless encampment is under the bridge at an intersection of South Chase Avenue and South First Street along the Kinnickinnic River. And I've visited a few times. It is right on the banks of the river, and where they stayed under the bridge, it's like a kind of a tight squeeze. You kind of have to crouch a little bit. And what I've heard from homeless outreach groups is that that place looked like a home before the flood. There was a couch, there was mattresses, there's blankets. I've heard from street angels that for the past 10 years, there could be anyone between one person living there to several, and then from Bob's Friends Under the Bridge, they told me that anywhere between 5 to 12 people have stayed at that encampment over the years. I
mean, what's important from your reporting is like this encampment, which is right on the banks of the river, also feeds into Lake Michigan, which is where a couple of bodies were found that were also in the encampment, which we'll get to. But I want to hit on Miguel's family. Can you tell me about all of the work they're doing to try to find him and locate him now we're a couple weeks after the flooding?
So on Saturday, they started at before 9 a.m. They got up about more than 40 volunteers to search the Kinnickinnic River. They started at the encampment and took kayaks, and then also Brew City Kayaking. They started the day before and searched for several hours, but the family searched the whole day.
So there's been this really large response from his family and also this community outreach. Some organizations or folks that have not participated in this active search are Milwaukee Police and the city of Milwaukee. What do we know about why, let's start with the police, why they're not actively engaging in a search for Miguel?
The Milwaukee Police Department has said that they will not search the river right now because they don't have enough information. They need to have had a witness who has told the police department that they have seen Flores or others from the homeless encampment be swept into the water. Without that information, they're not gonna search. And then when I reached out to the mayor's office, they really just deferred me to emergency services like MPD.
The idea that they would need a witness is really interesting, considering the fact that there were two bodies that were found in Lake Michigan from that same encampment, Juan Carlos Sierra Campos and Isaias Serna. But their deaths aren't being considered flood-related. Why is that?
Yeah, I know at least Juan Carlos Campos, when he was found the morning after the flood, the medical examiner's office and the police department both reported that his death was not flood-related, and I have asked both departments multiple times how they came to this conclusion.
Because the bodies were found in Lake Michigan.
Yes,
so
right.
It
They were
makes
found
sense.
in Lake Michigan. Yeah, and they have not answered that question. But Isaias Serna, the medical examiner, did say it could be flood-related and did confirm he did look homeless.
There was this language that you used within the story that I found really interesting about when MPD will start to engage in a search, and it's if someone's critically missing, which I think they pointed to if it was the case of a child. And then you also made a note if it were in the case of a disaster, i.e. flooding. Mm-hmm. So why has he still not been designated critically missing?
Mm-hmm. Because according to Milwaukee Police Department, they have had no witnesses see him go into the water, and they do not speculate, as they have said several times, that he could have been swept in the water. They will not consider that a drowning without a witness, without more information beyond that too.
Even though the flooding objectively happened in the middle of the night at a homeless encampment. Okay. Mm-hmm. If there's a final question I have for you, it's reading your reporting throughout this and even thinking of your reporting on unhoused folks during the RNC last year, is that it's really tough to keep track of people who are unhoused. I'm thinking of Isaias's brother who was found at a laundromat around the same time that his body was recovered from Lake Michigan. What are the challenges in tracking people that don't have permanent residences in situations like this?
Yeah, I mean, what I've learned from organizations like Street Angels is that major disasters or like extreme weather, like floods, displaces people and it changes their routine. And so maybe they don't show up, this week, but maybe they show up the next. I heard from another organization, Mini Streets, that they were looking for someone and they ended up being in jail. So it can be tough when they don't have close family or an address to really know for certain if they're lost. And then also sometimes people who are unhoused don't share their last names or maybe go by a different first name too. All those kind of contribute to.
The thing that makes his story so remarkable is that he had all of these points of contact, right? Like he had a job, he had family that he checked in with, it seems like every day. And these are routines that have just stopped over the past couple of weeks. So the thing, when I think about how difficult it is to track people, is that Miguel had these touch points on a regular basis. Like his case, it feels like should be more clear-cut.
Yeah, what's different about Miguel Flores is he had a lot of touch points. Like every single day would see his sister, go to his sister's house to shower, to eat, to charge up his phone. He would hang out at the Kazubi's park. His nephews would be able to find him there quite easily. And he also worked at their construction company. And so when he didn't show up to those things, and even when one of the close friends of Miguel called Arturo about not seeing him, it became apparent quite quickly that he was missing.
Gina, thank you so much for talking with me. We'll keep an eye on your reporting as this goes forward.
Thank you.
Gina Lee Castro is a reporter with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. She spoke with WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez. You can find more coverage of last month's historic floods at WUWM.com. Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson has a goal of growing the city's population to 1 million people. One way he's anticipating that may happen is by people moving to the Midwest to flee areas of the country that are severely impacted by climate change. The city is already taking steps to address climate change through its Climate and Equity Plan, as well as a need for housing if the population should increase. Mayor Johnson joins WUWM's Taryn Powell to discuss his hope to grow Milwaukee's population and how the city is preparing for the potential of climate migration here.
You've often talked about growing Milwaukee's economy and increasing the population. Was increasing the population, is that independent of Milwaukee's Climate and Equity Plan or part of it?
It's separate from the climate and equity plan, although the plan does dovetail very well with that goal. And I think it dovetails well with the goal because the climate is not changing just here in Milwaukee. It's changing around the country. It's changing around the world. And I believe, and we already see this in some respects, that people will move because of a changing climate. And I think that a place like Milwaukee is ripe to reap the benefits in terms of population growth of that movement. That's not to say that we won't have challenges as it relates to climate. Every place will. But I think that we are well suited to address those challenges. Like that's the whole reason why we have the climate and equity plan. And then also have the benefit of having those additional people come to Milwaukee.
Just looking at the climate and equity plan, I did see mention of climate migration and with your goal of growing the population, like this particularly was talking about the need for more housing. And so talk a little bit about that. Like how soon could we see houses being built? I just wonder, where will these houses be? Who are the stakeholders, committees, talking about this?
Well, I think we need to be prepared for climate migration. I also think that we need to do a better job of making sure that the people who presently live in Milwaukee have access to safe, affordable housing in the city as it is. Even if you take climate migration off the table, there's a need to have some 30,000 additional units for African American, for Latino homeowners in the city of Milwaukee, folks who want to break out into other housing choices, housing units. That's why I'm very, very happy, very, very proud that the City Plan Commission approved my housing policy, the housing element, a larger part of Growing Milwaukee initiative, to make sure that there's more availability to build the different types of housing choices that we need in Milwaukee so that we can also lower the cost, right? Because Milwaukee was named by the was it the Washington Post, I believe, as the most, or one of the most cutthroat rental markets in the United States. I love New York. I don't want to be compared to New York as it relates to as much money as it takes to rent an apartment here in Milwaukee. So we're working to make sure that it's easier to develop in Milwaukee so that folks who live here have the opportunity, but then also making sure that we have the space for the people who I believe will come here. And look, I knock on doors in my job as mayor. I did the same thing when I was alderman. I've already met people who have moved here because of climate disasters where they originally hailed from in the United States.
I asked that, especially looking at the conditions that already exist in Milwaukee, like racial disparities and such. We know that climate change will exacerbate those disparities that already exist. So I just wonder, in the case that climate migration, well, you just mentioned you know people who have moved for climate-related reasons, moved to Milwaukee already. With that being a reality, climate migration, how do you see it faring for Milwaukee, whether it's good or bad, or do you think it's both?
I think it could be a good thing. Look, this is something that's going to happen. People will leave when there's turmoil, whether it's economic, whether it's political, whether it's violence, whether it's climate related, from where they are to get to a better space. Milwaukee presents that better space, and so I think people ultimately will come. It's our responsibility to make sure we're setting the city on a responsible path to make sure that the folks who stay here are able to stay here, right? That's why it's important for us to build more affordable housing. That's why it's important for us to make sure we have more developments in the city that promote density and making a space for the future people who will come here as well. And those are the things that we're doing in Milwaukee. You just touched on, though, some of the race-based challenges that have been present here, and not just here, but in other places as well. That's exactly why in our climate and equity plan, it specifically says that we want to work to make sure that people who have been shut out of opportunities, typically people of color, African Americans, Latinos, Asians alike, that they have the opportunity to work in jobs in the green sector. So we're working to make sure that we are able to maintain the people who are here, working to make sure we bring on new spaces for the folks who will come here, but then also working to maintain an opportunity for people who live in Milwaukee, who has always called Milwaukee home, to continue to call Milwaukee home, and that's very important to me.
What would community input look like, as the city is developing these plans, for people to have an opportunity to even say, like, hey, we don't want this, or we do, or here's what we think this should look like? Would there be, like, community forum spaces like that?
Yeah, I mean, the Climate and Equity Plan, again, this passed a couple of years ago, and I was proud to sign it into law. It came out of a task force, a city-county task force on climate and equity. And so we had people from the community sitting on that task force that were engaged in the process. I believe there were listening sessions on this as well. I have to go back and confirm that, but I believe with everything that is in my head, I believe that was the case too on that. So we created the space for that to happen. And then as it relates to the housing element, that was passed by the City Plan Commission. I mean, there were so many opportunities for community outreach, so many opportunities for community engagement.
Unless you have really experienced the climate change impacts, or like you really pay attention to the issue, like you're in groups who pay attention to this, maybe folks aren't even really thinking about climate migration right now. But I mean, what can you tell them as far as like how Milwaukee is preparing for this, for everyone to benefit?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think for many folks, because you're here, right? So you already benefit from not being in a place that is stricken by these really, really adverse climate disasters, because we're more moderate in terms of that when you look across the country. So folks may not be paying so much attention to it. I'm paying a lot of attention to it as mayor, because I think our city needs to be prepared, not just for now, but for 20 years from now. And so I think people should know that we're taking steps to make sure that when and if, and I think it's more of a when, more people come here as they flee away from hurricanes, as they flee away from wildfires, as they flee away from sweltering heat, as they flee away from places that unfortunately don't have access to stable sources of water. I mean, you've got in this country, in the United States already, places out west where their water sources are drying up. I have read where there have been subdivision developments that have had to stop developing because they didn't have enough water to support the people who would live there. But here in Milwaukee, right, we've got Lake Michigan. We've got an inland sea that is plentiful. And with the Great Lakes Compact, that water resource, it stays here. It stays here. So people are more than welcome to come here and enjoy the lake and the water and the clean drinking water that we have, but it's not going to get shipped out to the desert in Arizona, for instance, or Nevada or places like that. So that's something that I think we have to continue to pay attention to. I am paying attention to it. We're going to continue to make sure that we build affordable housing in the city. We're going to continue to make sure that we're focused on creating more density in the city, which, by the way, is good for existing businesses in Milwaukee, existing commercial corridors and businesses there in the city of Milwaukee. We're going to work to make sure we're building out opportunities for more people to call Milwaukee home. We're going to continue to make sure we're focused in on the climate impacts by looking for alternative energy sources for city buildings. We're going to continue to make sure that we're looking out for opportunities to electrify our vehicle fleet in the city of Milwaukee, whether it's in the Department of Public Works, whether it's in the Milwaukee Police Department, the like. We're going to continue to make sure we're building out a protected bikeway system so that less people in our city have to rely on a car in order to get from where they are, and not then therefore contributing more to the climate crisis. So there's a lot of things that we're doing in the city of Milwaukee. I'm very, very proud of them, and it's going to take some time, but I think all together as a community we'll get there.
That was Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson speaking with WUWM race and ethnicity reporter Taryn Powell. That conversation was recorded in June. Did you know you can listen to Lake Effect as a podcast? Search for Lake Effect wherever you get your podcast, download, and listen to us on demand. In about 10 minutes, we'll visit Milwaukee's Shea Garden, which recently celebrated 20 years in the Silver City neighborhood. But first, we're heading to Baraboo, Wisconsin, where the circus is always in town. We'll learn about the history and future of the Circus World historic site coming up on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Baraboo, Wisconsin has claimed the title of Circus Capital of the World for over 60 years. Today at Circus World, National Historic Landmarks, museums, and circus archives occupy the original winter quarters of the Ringling Brothers Circus. The site's new executive director, Julie Parkinson, has family ties to the museum. WUWM's Eddie Morales met Parkinson at Circus World, where they watched a live performance and discussed the museum's future.
Earlier this summer, I visited Circus World in Baraboo. The sights and sounds evoke the golden age of the circus. Its presence is loud and colorful. In the late 1800s, traveling performers rode ornate wagons through towns to promote the big show.
So everyone knew it was Circus Day, all the shops were closed, and everyone would sort of follow the parade onto the showgrounds to see the show.
That's Julie Parkinson, Circus World's new executive director. Today, the Wisconsin Historical Society operates the site. Circus World is home to several national landmarks, hundreds of artifacts and wagons, and seasonal live performances. Parkinson explains, the Ringling Brothers were some of the most influential circus owners and performers, and their roots were here in Wisconsin.
They started their circus here in 1888, and Baraboo was their hometown, and it became their winter quarters, which just means they would go out with their circus in the spring and come back in the fall, and then they would bring all their animals and wagons and equipment and everything and just regroup here over the winters to get ready for the spring show.
To document that history, the museum first opened in 1959. Parkinson shares her family ties to Circus World.
In 1965, my grandfather, Robert L. Parkinson, was recruited to begin the Library and Research Center here because the museum was acquiring all of these artifacts. And then a little bit later down the road, in 1985, my dad became director of the Circus World Museum, and he held that position for 18 years. And during that time, I started performing when I was about 10 years old, along with my sister. Later, I went and performed with Ringling Brothers and a few other shows, and basically I've been gone for 23 years, and now I'm returning back to my roots and making the full circle as executive director and third generation in my family.
Before we see today's show, Parkinson leads us to a noisy corner of the grounds where workers are excavating.
This is what we call Ringlingville. And these buildings here along Water Street are original buildings that were from the Ringling Brothers winter quarters. So this was way before they combined forces with Barnum and Bailey Circus. We're walking by the Ring Barn right now, was built in 1901. The really cool thing is all of these buildings are on track to be renovated.
Excavation started this summer, and the renovations will finish next year. That's not the only restoration happening at Circus World. The more than 200 wagons in Baraboo account for the largest circus wagon collection in the world. Inside the Wagon Restoration Center, Parkinson points to a black and white photo of a bustling workshop.
And this is a picture of wagon restoration probably around the turn of the century. So there were so many people working on so many wagons, as you can see, which is what I would love to do today to really maintain the collection.
At the Wagon Pavilion, rows of them are on display, including the Bell Wagon, which is believed to be the only remaining one in existence. Just a handful of people know how to play it. A wagon with chipped white paint and dull gold coloring sits in the pavilion. It's called the Swan Bandwagon. Parkinson says it will serve as the catalyst for a resurgence in wagon restoration.
This will be eventually done completely in gold leaf. We're guessing to restore the whole wagon, it'll be a 2 to 3 year process. And right now we're looking at just under $200,000 to restore it.
The day's Big Top Circus show is about to begin. As we approach a large red and white tent, the sounds of crowd chatter and music grow louder. Inside, the roof of the tent is dark, like a clear midnight sky.
We want to transport people to a different place where they forget their everyday stresses. And so here in this tent, we have the lighting and the sound, you're smelling the popcorn, and it's just an attack on all of your senses. That's what we hope. And the show's about to begin now in just a minute.
It starts with the acrobatic swing act. Acrobats use the swing's momentum to flip high through the air. A net catches them after a long descent. Later, a horse riding duo perform tricks. One of them takes control of both horses. He stands with one foot on each saddle as the animals move in tandem. With one hand holding the reins, he guides his partner up to his shoulders, where she briefly stands as they wave to the crowd. For the finale, the audience looks up at a tightrope. A motorcycle balancing on the rope is connected to an acrobat below. The pair entertain the crowd as they perform stunts above their heads. After the show, Parkinson shares her vision for the future of Circus World.
Really the sky's the limit, how we continue that, whether it's creating a circus school down the road, continuing to try to build new exhibits, and be part of the community and educate the community of just what a gem we have here.
For Parkinson, the golden age of the circus is alive and well in Baraboo. Eddie Morales, 89.7, WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, keep the circus spirit alive in your hearts, and may all your days be Circus Day!
The Great Circus Parade happened between 1963 and 2009, with most of them actually taking place here in Milwaukee. It was originally meant to be a fundraiser for the World Circus Museum. The Great Circus Parade mimics circus stops of yore, with restored original gold-leafed wagons, performers, and historically accurate costumes that drew thousands of curious onlookers. Milwaukee PBS produced Remembering the Great Circus Parade, using archival footage and interviews to explain how the parade got started and what it meant to attendees. The film's producers, Joseph Sankey and Dale Polachek, sat down with Lake Effect's Sam Woods to discuss the film. Sankey begins with how it got started.
So Chappie Fox was at the Circus World Museum in Baraboo. And Chappie was collecting circus wagons, and he was the director of the museum. And he was looking all over on the country for any circus wagon in any kind of shape, and he was restoring them. And he decided he wanted to have recreate the historic circus parade, and he wanted to do this in the city of Baraboo. And he was out trying to raise funds to create this parade. And he connected up with Ben Barkin, who felt this was a fabulous idea, but he felt it should be in Milwaukee. And so Ben went to the Joseph Schlitz Brewing Company and asked them to sponsor it.
Joe, you mentioned, you were quoted in the press release for this documentary about how the parade was made to feel different every year with new wagons and bands and always keeping it fresh. Can you talk more about how Fox and Barkin kept this thing fresh for over 40 years?
Because it was never the same from one year to the next. Chappie would have acquired some new wagons and they were being restored. Or Ben would have used his connections to get a great host like he did with Ernie Borgnine. And there was just a constantly moving forward. New bands, new wagons, redistribute the sections of the parade. And sometimes it was a minor thing, like there was one bandwagon that for years, all of the carved ornamentation on it was painted with just gold metallic paint, like you go to the hardware store and you buy gold metallic paint. And Circus World Museum for that year replaced all of that gold paint with 24-karat gold leaf, solid gold. And it was a beautiful sunny day in Milwaukee when that wagon reappeared. And this was like looking at something that was the work of angels. It just sparkled, in a magnificent way in the sun. And Ben and Chappie knew that by constantly introducing things like that, people would come back each year. People from Europe would come to this. People from Canada, people from all across the nation would come to this. They created what became known as Wisconsin's national treasure. And even Tova Borgnine referred to it as, this is America's national treasure.
Well, over time, the parade certainly had its set of challenges. After sponsorship from Schlitz dried up in 1973, the Great Circus Parade was not held again until 1980, where it was held in Baraboo, the hometown of the Circus World Museum, followed by 2 years in Chicago before returning to Milwaukee from 1985 to 2003. But what led to the decline and eventual end of the parade in 2009?
Well, I think part of it was funding was, becoming more difficult. You didn't have the big sponsorship that you had early with Schlitz. Ben Barkin passed away in 2001, and Chappie Fox passed away in 2003, and I think these are the two really visionaries who absolutely started the parade. There were other people who kind of stepped in as Chappie and Ben were getting older. But when the parade came back in 2009, they had a kind of a rainy day fund that they decided to use one more time and have one more event. And Chappie's nephew and another gentleman named Jack McKeithen were the ones that brought it back in 2009. But they were involved in the 2003 and the 2002 parade. But, it was a major spectacular, and it cost about $1.5 million to bring the parade back for 1 year in 2009. That's a pretty big...
That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money for something that basically lasts 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe in some ways, maybe this is a jaded comment that I'm making, that we suddenly had a lot more things to distract people. The internet and and social media. And I kind of think that, even in those last years of the parade, we were kind of lucky because, people still had primitive cell phones. Lord knows they were the size of bricks when you carried them around. And now I would worry that if we had the parade, people wouldn't be watching it. They'd be watching it on their phones as opposed to looking up and seeing, or they'd be backing up into the 40-horse hitch trying to take a selfie.
I do that, yeah.
And that's kind of what worries me, that perhaps in some ways maybe we've outgrown the parade and the circus. Maybe it's considered old-fashioned in these days, but...
Yeah. I don't know, because, we're getting a lot of phone calls at the station that the word is out that we're doing this documentary, and people are just really excited about it. It's a time gone by, a time from the past, but they remember it and they want to see it, and it really was a spectacular. I think it was funding,
As you both produced this film, sifting through archival footage, reading clown history and circus backstories, all of that, really delving into this parade and the cultural moment that it was. I'm wondering if you ever thought of any present day modes of kind of like mass communal entertainment. I'm thinking like maybe a music festival, parades that still exist, or even a Beyonce or Taylor Swift concert, maybe even just like a TikTok trend that we're all taking part in together kind of separately. Do any of these fill the void left by the Great Circus Parade, or is there something that the parade tapped into that has just been left unfilled since it stopped in 2009?
Well, I don't think there's anything like it anymore. It was a spectacular event coming into a town. It was an extravaganza. It was something that you could take the family to. It was something that adults and grandparents could talk about their memories when they were younger. And it was something that you just don't see. So I suppose there's things you don't see today. Maybe they're more on social media, or maybe they're big shows, but sometimes those big shows have a big ticket cost to them. But this was a celebration to a city. It was a vision of many people, but a vision of two people. And, it was a spectacular that I don't think we'll see again.
I think as spectacular as the parade was, yes, there is nothing, I would say, today comparable to it. But we are fortunate in Milwaukee that we have so many other littler things that cumulatively give us a lot of stuff to do during the brief span of warmer weather that we have. We are known as the city of festivals, and you have the various ethnic and nationalist festivals down at the park by the lake. We have the lake. I think it is so wonderful to live next to a big body of water, as opposed to being landlocked. We have many small towns and even Madison where they have, a festival season in the summer. There's things to do that families can still do together, but they're more, each one has its own sort of focus. And so you can sort of pick and choose like from a menu about what you want to do. But there's still plenty of things that families can do together, that seniors can do to keep an active lifestyle, that people who are on their own, can do on their own if they want to. And I think we're fortunate in Milwaukee to have that, as opposed to probably a lot of cities and towns that don't.
Well, Joe, Dale, thank you so much for joining me on Lake Effect and taking us back to the time of the Great Circus Parade. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
That was Lake Effect's Sam Woods speaking with Joseph Sankey and Dale Polachek, who produced the film Remembering the Great Circus Parade. It aired on Milwaukee PBS last year, and you can now find it on YouTube. We'll take one more break and then visit Milwaukee's Shea Community Garden and meet some of the neighbors who made it into the place that it is today. Keep listening to Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. How do you care about the little things when the big things can be so overwhelming? For a few in the Silver City neighborhood of Milwaukee, caring for the little things is where meaning is made. On a bustling National Avenue lies Shea Garden, a small community park with a pergola, benches, and a variety of native flora. It's easy to overlook, but this garden contains the story of how neighbors, students, and artists transformed a public nuisance into a place of peace and passed it on to a new generation. The story begins with Helen and Maria, two of the neighbors who founded the park in 2007.
I'm Helen Hermes, and I live about a block away from the garden. Right now we're sitting in Shea Garden, and we are looking at the greenery that's here. In the spring, there are daffodils and tulips that are still coming up from when we planted it, when we started it in 2007. And there's some native plants that have come into the garden, but still the beauty and the spirit is still here.
My name is Maria Miramontes. I live a block away from the Shea Garden. And the way that I find out about the project was through Layton Boulevard with neighbors by then, now Via. And part of my part was collecting plants from neighbors and be part of the change. That was a beautiful thing to do as a community.
It used to be just a big grassy area with 3 trees in it, and there was a payphone that was next to it as well that we knew wasn't a good thing in the neighborhood.
The other part that I remember seeing in the area was dumping side. People just throwing mattresses, couches, and you name it. So we thought like that was a nice things to see it. So we tried to find a solution to avoid people to get in mind like still doing those dumping illegal. So make it nice and beautiful that they can respect and see the beauty.
I'm Rachel. I was a AmeriCorps Vista volunteer at Layton Boulevard West Neighbors in 2005, 6 to 2007. And I was a community builder, and I knocked on doors, did neighborhood watch programs, and helped people invest in their houses. And I had a special project of Shea Garden. Back then, we didn't have Zoom and nobody was texting, right? So it probably started with, a couple people standing at the park, a couple neighbors talking to each other, and then, one thing kind of led to another.
What I remember be part of the neighborhood meetings and nothing to decide what we wanted to see it or how we wanted to see it. That was a big concern because, they said if it's going to be part of the city responsibility, there has to be taxpayer money invested in there, but it was not. So we tried the best we can do it out of the pocket, and that was an inspiration that we can do a space that is not supported by the city. It's more local. It's more supported by the neighbors.
I think there was a hot dog place in the valley that donated hot dogs, and someone pushed over a grill. I mean, we were really nickeling and diming to make this happen. I didn't have a budget. We didn't have a grant. It was just really people excited to do something together, and it was immediate neighbors, it was seniors, it was young kids, and just over time we just did it. And I look back at how much energy I had and how cooperative people were and how we were able to do something with nothing and how cool that was. I was telling Helen when you reached out to me, do you remember that day that we had a bulldozer full of mulch delivered and dirt delivered, and 10 of us just had this mountain of dirt and mulch, and that's how we started making the beds, right? That's what you had to start with. And we just spent all day doing that, and people just volunteered to do it, and how wild that is that we did that.
It's fun to put something in, but it's really hard to maintain something like this.
After we got the garden, we continue the maintenance, spring cleanup. And then the summertime when it was really hot, and I remember Helen bring the hose to water the plants. So we tried to find ways to keep watering the plants, and that was a big challenge for that. And I think since we created that garden, that was one of the challenges, how we're going to do the maintenance. But I remember bringing one or two neighbors along with Jose, my husband, to come and do a cleanup. Just brush and here and pull the weed there and make it nice, and maybe on one weekend.
I went and saw people who had gardens. One, they'd donate. Two, they would know what they were doing. And Howard resisted me for months and months and months. But he finally came around and gave me a nickname, PIB, pain in the butt, because I was so persistent. But he was, I don't think we would have gotten where we were without him.
The first years, I think we did a really good job of maintaining it, like Maria explained. But after that, when people started moving away and people just started getting busy with their own lives, it was Howard did a lot of the maintenance himself, and he was continually buying plants to put into the garden. And in 2015, he had a stroke, and it was really debilitating, and he couldn't do it anymore. And I think that's when it really started to kind of fall apart.
My name is Monica Beltran, and I am the cafe manager and educator here at New Line Cafe with Escuela Verde. So I am a pastry chef by trade. I decided to go into education and do some food service teaching, and I was able to find a job here at Escuela Verde along with New Line Cafe, teaching students about coffee, the history of coffee, where food comes from. And a lot of the times that brings in gardens, community gardens. Essentially how we became connected to Shea Garden is via the community organization here in Silver City. Reached out to us because they were in a dire need of cleanup at the garden. Our students do a lot of community cleanup during the school year, We'll take students out to pick up garbage, to clean drains. So a lot of the organizations that are around here, they know that we like to take our students out into the community. There's times that we even drive our students out to other places outside of our neighborhood to get involved. But we really try to get our students to take care of the spaces here in Silver City because a lot of them do live here. A lot of them, this is their neighborhood. And just us by being here, both Escuela Verde and New Line Cafe, we also say that this is our neighborhood, even if we don't live here.
My heart is full of joy for that because it's the new generation who's taking over and they can see what we saw when we created. We put something to work that is teaching others those responsibilities. I think that is an inspiration for the new generation. What we did in the past, but still the goal of continuing and the educational piece and taking care of the community.
My name's Sally Duback. I'm a studio artist and have been for 50 years. I was told to design benches with the students, and we ended up creating mushrooms, giant concrete mushrooms that serve as benches. Actually, we made 3 of them. My first meeting with the students was to introduce them to the fact that we were going to do the project and to do drawings of whatever came to mind in order to create the benches. And they came up with some pretty fantastical shapes like squirrels and bunnies and things like that. It was actually Monica who suggested mushrooms. And I thought, well, that's doable because we're going to build them out of concrete. And I had to create the forms for them. The students applied the cement. So that's how we came up with the mushrooms. I thought it was a great idea, so we stuck with that.
My name is Antonio, and I'm pretty much working at the cafe over the summer to earn money and have more experience doing barista. I know Shea Park is here for a long time, has been taken care of by neighbors, has been tended to over the years, and we decided to do an event here called Shea Garden Pop-Up, where we will serve drinks, food, and a little bit of fruit to people that want to come here and enjoy the garden at Shea Garden. We came here last week, cleaned up a little bit, prepared for today, and we chose today because it's a pretty good day, sunny, not that hot, not that cold, and I think it's a little fun event that we do once every summer.
So even seeing students read like the quotes on brickwork that the neighbors that started the garden created, I think for them it's a way to realize that this is a bigger project than themselves. It's bigger than just like volunteering and doing a cleanup and picking up the garbage. They're continuing something that was created by real people, real neighbors, people in their community and people that cared for these green spaces.
I like the history of it, right? Like it started out as a neighborhood project and neighbors kept it up for a while, and then we have Escuela Verde that comes in and says, well, let's try to do this thing in the neighborhood again. So hopefully a lot more neighbors will get engaged in it. A lot of the ones that had been living here are no longer living here, so we really do need to do like kind of a revitalization of the work crew that comes out to care for it.
Well, for me, I would say like there is a capsule time alive. We have our work with the pagoda. Now we have the new thing with the glasses, and I can tell you many of the plans are for people who, where they pass away or they move out. But I remember some stories about how the plant was brought to the house. We have a few hostas around where they were given for the mother-in-law, one of the neighbors, and I'm talking about 60 years ago. So that means it's created from the past to the present and for the future. So that is the beauty.
That piece was produced by Lake Effect Sam Lutz. You can visit Shea Garden at the intersection of National Avenue and Shea Avenue in the Silver City neighborhood of Milwaukee. And that's Lake Effect for today. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Joy Powers, Sam Woods, and Excrit Nunez join me in producing Lake Effect each week, with help from Rob Larry and Graham Thomas. Becky Mortensen is our executive producer. Emily Fowles helps edit the show. We also heard from Catherine Kokel, Jimmy Gutierrez, Mayan Silver, and Eddie Morales from the WUWM News team this week. Jason Reevy is our studio engineer, Michelle Maternowski is our digital manager, Valeria Navarro Villegas is our digital editor. Trapper Shep wrote our theme music. If you've missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at WUWM.com. If you'd like to take the show on the go, you can download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Join us again on Monday at noon for the return of Capitol Notes. We'll share what's happening in state politics and what's to come. Plus, we'll bring you to a beach in Door County where it's not the water that people are coming to check out, it's what's on the shore. Thank you so much for joining us today, right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.